friends. Welcome to episode 227 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How are we doing, Rob?
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
I think we're both in the same place right now.
I actually said to someone earlier today, I've got my podcast tonight, and I hope I get some spoons out of it.
Yeah.
I got decent sleep last night. In fact, looking at my watch, I was like, I wonder how much sleep I got. I'm like, I actually got almost 7 hours with an hour of deep REM.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I haven't had deep REM in days. This is good,
yeah.
But at the same time, I'm still emotionally just drawn out.
Same here.
So.
I was telling you earlier, I'm like, we had to get the show sheet together for tonight's podcast. And I was like, I just don't wanna.
Yeah, I mean, there.
For
the first time, it felt kind of like it always feels like work going into it, but by the end of it, we're like, yeah, okay,
yeah, we feel energized by this.
This.
This time around, it was just like, we got this done.
We got it. Yeah.
I think it was a very long weekend, and it's been oppressive humidity, and I just
we also had a lot of creativity we had to pull together this weekend.
Yeah.
You had a game to run, and one to be in.
Yeah.
And your game that you ran, you did 3 distinct adventures crammed into an extended adventure.
It was a marathon session.
It really was.
I think it was really good.
Oh, it turned out great.
But yeah, I think we're all just spent right now. It's not that we don't want to be doing the podcast or that we're not enthusiastic about the topic, but it's just man, the coffers are empty right now.
We're honest. That's what we are. If anything, we're honest
about it. Yeah, exactly.
This is what you get when there's no editing.
But you're right. We did 2 games this weekend. So let's hear. First off, we talked about let's talk about Sean's Nova Praxis game.
Third game.
We're getting dangerously close to having a campaign out of that man.
Yeah, if he gets that 4th game in, it's on.
Here it comes.
It's on.
I
wonder how many other people really feel the same way about that. I feel like it's a hidden thing that once you get past the 4th, it's you just keep moving.
Yeah.
But up until that point, you're terrified that whether or not the game's going to exist or not.
Mm-hmm.
Week to week, you're just kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, look, you have enough games peter out in session 1 or session 2, and
so true.
You give it your try, and people just don't come back, and you don't have the enthusiasm for it. But you make it to game 4, it's a thing now.
Mm-hmm.
So
very much so. And yours is on 37?
37 was...
And we game monthly.
Monthly, yes. So it's been going on for a couple of years now. And
yeah.
then we had an extended break during COVID. So.
Yeah. But still, that's impressive. Yeah. I actually had a comment I was asking Vicky, I was just did this happen when we were in D&D or Savage World? I actually had to think about what rule set we were in when something happened.
Oh, yeah.
So, because that determines some of the feel.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, it really does. I thought the Nova Praxis game was really good.
Yeah, very much so.
It turned into an interesting bug hunt sort of situation.
Yeah, it wasn't what I expected at all, but then again, I'm getting the feeling that the game is going to be different session to session in that sense.
So Sean says something funny to me on the way home, and he's like, I'm just trying to give you guys a number of plot hooks just to kind of see what you guys grab onto.
Sure.
He's like, and I'm afraid you guys kind of grabbed onto this plot hook because it was the most immediate thing that was that was happening in front of you.
You presented it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I told him. I'm like, well, yeah, that's that's what plot hooks do. He's like, yeah, I know, but you guys could have left and gone after that other plot hook. And I'm like, right, but people were dying. I said, and I think you kind of presented us with that Skyrim problem of you can do anything, you can go anywhere. Dragons are going to burn down the entire world tomorrow, but you can go build a house.
Yeah.
Explore the mountainside, raise a family, and if you don't take care of those dragons, they're going to kill everybody. But, there's untold, ruins out there you should delve into, strange artifacts, dragons to ignore because they're destroying the world right now. But go do anything you want.
Yeah. Exactly.
And he was like, oh, yeah, it is kind of that. I'm like, but your feedback at the end of the game, your wishes and stars, everybody loved the plot hook you gave us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all very enthusiastic about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it is because you put it in front of us, and that was the shiny thing in the moment.
Yep. And I think that leads me into your game a little bit.
Yeah.
In the way that it rolled out, because we had 3 distinct adventures that we were trying to get through so you could get us out of Apocrypha, basically, and be done with it. But I think you handled those in the most Savage World ways. You handled it with savage disregard.
I was like, guys, we need to move forward. Let's just go.
Yeah, and you busted through those.
And so we had like a kind of an extended dramatic task that was getting through a minefield of traps and stuff like that. There was a kind of extended interlude sort of thing where it was like a group storytelling activity where I just kind of went around the table and was like, tell me, what's the interesting thing? Okay, well, this interesting thing is this. All right, cool. And how does that affect you? And what is a danger that pops up from that? And everybody's had a really good time with that. And then the third one was kind of a combat encounter.
Yeah, but I will say that I think the feedback for that one, for the extended interlude, was probably some of the best in regards to that specific mechanic for Savage World, in the sense that it does tend to put players on the spot, which is why, as a whole, it's meant to be there if you wish to be part of it.
Right.
And in this, you made it part of a mechanic to move through, and it definitely had the stumbling point that was expected, which is people just being like, I don't have anything.
I can't come up with something creative on the spot, let alone 3 or 4 rounds of coming around to creative stuff on the spot. Yeah.
Right. But I don't think it was a bad stumble. I don't think it was. I think it was still a really good adventure in that sense.
Yeah. All around, everybody had fun.
But yeah, I agree. But it did expose what the issues were, just like any mechanic, which is always great, because then you're like, okay, this is how I move forward differently.
Yeah, and I've got really, really great players who aren't afraid to look me in the eye and say, this one didn't work for me.
And why.
But also, we had fun doing it. We had fun trying,
Yeah,
so.
Whether they were directly involved or not. And it definitely showed the Benny economy of Savage Worlds.
Oh my god.
Especially in the very last action adventure, I think there were times when we were just throwing bennies to the wind.
We ran out of bennies in the
You ran out of bennies to
middle
give
pile.
out.
Yeah, the middle pile ran out. They were all delved out to people, and then we were dipping into like temporary bennies of like other sorts. Like, what can we use as bennies?
Which is funny. You went back to the original bennies, the original Savage World bennies, which is hilarious. But definitely need to print more bennies. Definitely need to print.
You guys should spend them more.
But it's hard.
The problem is you were spending them.
Yeah,
there was just that many coming up. So yeah.
So I think it was. I think it's definitely interesting to see how that economy works, and then what the availability for that economy to be able to spend it.
Yeah.
So yeah, otherwise really, really good.
Yeah, I felt very good about how game went. I think the first bit of feedback I gave at the end of the game was everything went essentially as I planned it.
Wow.
Like the thing that blew me away was the traps. Right.
The very last one?
Trying to get through that minefield of traps. I had just kind of picked like an arbitrary number of like 9 successes to get through 4 different groups of traps.
9 by 9 by 9 by 9 by 9.
Right. So and how I came to that was like I was like, okay, well, there's 6 players at the table, increase that by 50%. And I thought that was a fair number, and I think 3 out of the 4 of them, you guys hit 9 exactly at the end of the round.
Yep.
And that felt so perfect.
Yeah.
Like it's such a great feeling when you are running a game and you just intuitively start understanding the mechanics and how the balance of the game works enough that you just balance the game yourself.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Yeah, that one felt really good. All right. You want to get into the main topic?
Sure. We've got enough that we can go over here and some good ideas to kick around.
So let me start by asking you a quick question here.
Sure.
You've run several games here in the past and stuff like that,
yes,
across different multiple systems,
yes,
and stuff like that. What has the final boss of those campaigns been?
Always scheduling.
Always scheduling.
Always scheduling.
Scheduling is the final boss of any campaign.
Any campaign. If you are playing something more than a one shot, and I don't care if it's a 2-shot, scheduling is your nemesis.
Yep.
Without a doubt.
Scheduling has killed more campaigns than any monster in the Monster Manual.
Yeah, because there's always something that gets in the way. Always. Always something.
That's the main reason we only play once a month. We're all adults. We're like families,
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to try and make that time. And then you have weather, health, family, work, travel.
Yeah.
Everything stacks on top of that. But we try and make it work as best we can.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that doesn't mean that you're not left in the situation, which quintessentially brings out tonight's topic, which is that someone is going to be left out at some point.
Yeah, at some point, whether it's a last-minute cancellation
Mm-hmm.
or whether it's I know ahead of time I'm not going to be able to make it.
Yeah. This month is bad for me.
Right,
I
yeah.
can't promise that I will be there for the adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're not. And it begs to ask the question of how bad does it have to get before you just don't run it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how many people or how difficult does the situation need to get?
And I think this is one of those situations that's different for every single storyteller and different every table, you know. Sean is very much of the mind of like, I'm going to invite 7 people to my game because I know at any given time only 5 of them are ever going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're going to play with 5. Whoever shows up plays. Whoever
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. To me, though, I always say, well, what about the nightmare situation where, where all 7 of them show up, you know? So I like to have a set roster,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't like playing without anybody because I don't like the idea that a player is unimportant enough they can be missed.
Right.
You know? But understanding that I take my game very seriously, probably a lot more seriously than a lot of other people do, you know? I know there's a lot of beer and pretzels games out there where nobody gives a crap, and they're just like, hey, we're playing D&D on a Friday night, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
It's not serious, it's just a game.
It's a board game.
Right, yeah.
Effectively. Yeah.
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 Might as well be playing Madden on the Xbox, you know?
Yeah.
Like, who cares? We're not canceling the event because Bob can't make it.
Right. Exactly. And I think there's a definite feeling for each table on that. I think some people like to run based on schedules, like because they have to. Like this room that we have, like if you're on a college campus or something, and you're like, you know, we schedule this room for the second Thursday of every month. That is when we run, regardless, because you have to.
Yeah.
You know, versus we run this every week on Thursday nights from 4 to 9, and that's our game block. Show up if you can. You know.
Yeah.
And then you just cancel if it's only 2 people there at the table, and play a board game instead. And I've known that there's a lot of people who will do that, where it'll still be the same game night. They just won't run that game. They'll do something else, But at the same time, it's still compromising.
Yeah.
It's not doing the thing that you had planned to do.
And of course, I mean, it's always a weird situation that it puts the storyteller in, because a lot of times you have plot tied to that missing player,
Very much so.
I know there's a lot of games, especially like adventure league games and stuff that where basically anybody can show up at any time, and you just play with whoever's there, and the plot just continues for whoever's and you just basically you don't acknowledge the absences or new additions.
Right. And oftentimes those are episodic.
Yeah.
So this is all just one contained adventure. So it's not bound to any particular player,
right?
But
because
it doesn't
involve the person,
right?
Right. It's you could bring any character on that because the story isn't about that character,
right?
The character is just the one executing the story. But a lot of us, I mean, we try to make our games very tied to our players. We try to make our plots very personal and involved and stuff like that. And then you end up with this double-edged sword where you've got a plot tied to a missing player that happens, On one hand, yeah, they do feel very involved and very important and stuff like that. On the other hand, if they don't show up, what does everyone else do?
Mm-hmm. It's this character's party. They're not there.
Right.
That just feels awkward as hell.
It does.
So.
So you got to ask yourself: is that character critical to the plot, or is it really just kind of a generic plot, but it's of specific interest to that character? Like we had this situation happen at our table. In fact, not the game that happened on Monday, but like a month and a half ago when we played in July.
Yes.
we had a player who woke up with a severe migraine that morning.
Yeah, couldn't remote it, couldn't do anything.
Yeah, was not functional.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just very, last minute. We didn't know until they woke up that morning. So, part of the plot was technically in pursuit of that character's direct goals.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I kind of looked it over and we were like, oh, well, what do we do? Do we, do we put this
skip
one on
this?
On
Do
the
we,
side burner?
yeah.
We kind of looked at it and we were like, actually, the plot doesn't actually, the execution of the plot doesn't have a lot to do personally with the character.
Right.
Like, the end goal is get the thing that is of interest to the character, but it's just a MacGuffin.
Mm-hmm.
As long as that MacGuffin ends up in that character's pocket at the end of the day, the adventure, it can be had by anybody.
Correct.
And so we decided to go ahead with it.
Yep.
And obviously that person was missed.
Right.
I love all of my players, but...
the character was there, effectively.
Yes.
But not as a controlled, moment-to-moment controlled PC.
Yeah, we made some smart NPC choices on their behalf.
To explain what they were doing.
Right.
But nothing of effect.
So, yeah, sometimes you can do that. Sometimes you can just kind of go ahead anyway. But, if it's a character-specific plot, like, it is literally, it does not make sense without the character there. We had another one of these where, luckily we didn't have to scrub the game, but Sean gets called away on work a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's essentially always on call, and the place he works for is a 24/7 operation.
Mm-hmm.
And if something breaks, he's the first person they call to come fix it. So we sat down, and it was like this big party that was specifically about his personal interests. Like, the only reason you guys were even getting involved with this is because Lord Thalian Arroway came to you guys and was like, guys, we need to roll up our sleeves and get in on this because this is my jam right here. And then right at the beginning of that session, he gets a call from work, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And everybody's like, well, let's just play anyways. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is like having a birthday party for him, and he's not there for it.
He's like, have fun, guys. I'll see you later.
We're just eating his cake and opening his presents, but he's not here,
Exactly.
So
the question then is how do you handle these situations as they come up? What are viable options?
Well, first step I always take is to break out into a cold sweat and start catastrophizing everything.
Yep. That's usually what all good GMs do.
Because this is the end of my game, and nothing will ever be pure or good ever again.
Yep.
And I'm not allowed to have nice things.
Don't forget to flip the table and toss your notes.
Yes,
Yep,
always.
That is exceptionally important. Once you've gotten past that, though,
once you're done hyperventilating,
yeah, and you've got a moment to look over everything and say, what do I have left of the things that are still attached to the table?
Right.
The answer is that you can step away from what you had planned and do something adjacent.
Sure. You got a ton of options.
Yeah. And it really is situationally determined because your table may not agree with some of the ideas, but what you can do is learn to shift. For instance, a flashback is a great way to go because oftentimes players have done things prior. There's a time gap.
Oh, sure.
And you're like, okay, we went to here. You're like, okay, let's take a minute and let's roll back 2 months ago when you guys started the journey here. Let's talk about some of the stuff that happened along that way. Now, it's easy with like Savage World interludes and things like that, but there's nothing to say that you can't make an adventure that happened in the past when that person wasn't available.
And I think this is honestly not one that I would have come up with. But frankly, I thought this was probably your best addition to this entire discussion right here.
Yeah.
And simply because it's brilliant on so many levels. First off, it's a flashback. Therefore, it has already happened. We already know everyone ends up safe.
Yep.
So, like, it's not high stakes. You know your characters are going to make it through whatever happens here.
Yep.
Okay. And you can have some fun explaining it if your characters get, like, wiped or something like that. Okay, how do you get out of this one, you know? Secondly, it's all based on things that have already happened.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, hopefully, the framework for the adventure is already spoken into the history of your game.
Yeah. And inevitably, you'll get sometimes characters who will have relationships with other characters where they're just like, dude, we're not doing that thing that we did before. Well, now you have a chance to talk about that thing that happened before.
Mm-hmm.
Experience it and be like, okay, let's go over that that moment.
Oh, kind of like Hawkeye and Black Widow always talking about what Budapest, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Let's
Do you remember what happened? You remember? Let's do Budapest.
It's 13 years ago. You're in Budapest.
Exactly. And in those types of things, you can be a lot more fast and loose with things. You could go for more feeling than detail. And your players can, like you said, have that confidence that this is fun. Mm-hmm. We're just having fun. No big deal. And that prior moment, because it doesn't include the individual who isn't there, can allow for a lot of other things as well. For instance, there is nothing to say that you don't just choose a different character at the table to do that flashback with. For instance, if you want to, you could look at the table and say, does anybody have a secret that they want to expose or a moment from their past they want to expose? And now, normally in Savage Worlds, that would just be a quick conversational interlude. Whereas with this, you can be like, okay, here are your cards for the rest of you as NPCs in this.
Yeah.
Here are your player cards. We're going to roll through this scenario, and I'm going to set up the scenes with you guys. And we'll see what happens. And take 5 minutes, and you can design something very light and fun, where everybody can enjoy it, and maybe that one person can now have a story that everyone hears about, because that's what maybe gets discussed. Mm-hmm. And it adds fun, it gives you the flavor, everyone still gets to have the fun that they had, and it doesn't change the current story. It just adds a flashback that people are now aware of. Likewise, if you know about a situation like we just said, there's nothing to say that you can't say, we're going to do that scenario. Let's see what really happened.
Yeah.
You know? And that's how you remembered it. Doesn't mean that's exactly how it went down. So, flashbacks are always in there. Right now, one of the big things with Baldur's Gate is everybody is looking at it because when you do long rests, you have these moments that happen between the characters where the NPCs in your party who may not have been part of the party at that time, if you're playing, with other players, whether it be like you've got your full roster or actually other physical people, so you may not even be having some of the game's NPCs coming in. They come to you during those long rests that are like, hey, by the way. And you have these full discussions and disclosures that happen during those, sometimes full little events that occur.
Exactly.
That you have to deal with. There's nothing to say that you can't do something like that, where basically a long rest turns into something actionable.
You wake up to a Astarian trying to bite you.
Mm-hmm.
You bop him on the nose, you look him firmly in the eye, and you tell him, no.
Right.
No biting.
Yeah. Meanwhile, another one of your characters is trying to steal from someone else because they want the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing says that you can't have a whole adventure that's wrapped around something that just happens in camp. Well, someone sleeps off their drunkenness.
Yep.
Or gets over a cold or whatever.
Yeah.
Those kinds of long rests can be an adventure within themselves.
Sure, absolutely.
And then it doesn't affect the timeline with that individual. They wake up, they feel much better, and they're like, you guys look a little rough. What happened?
Yeah.
We'll talk about it later.
This sort of solution is really good for, like, if you've got something that is on a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're traveling from point A to point B, and you're like, well, as soon as we get to the city, this event has to happen, and the plot has to move forward, so what do we do? Mm-hmm. Well, you've got, like, 8 whole hours to play with there on the road overnight. Mm-hmm. So play with them, stretch them out, make something happen overnight,
Yeah.
It may change the tone for the next game, but you've got the time for it. You can make the time for it.
Yeah, one of the ones that always drops into my mind is the alterations that can go into that, which involves a lot more of the travel parts of it, where you make the assumption that travel just happened. Now you can go back and fill in that blank of travel.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know,
I mean,
whether it be short or long, whether they had to stop for materials, or maybe even the key person who's involved has to go get something, an invitation,
sure.
or meet with somebody. While they're doing that, this occurs.
How does the old adage go? D&D is a game where a 5-minute combat takes you 3 hours, and a 3-hour trip takes you 5 minutes.
Yep, exactly. So you have those flexibilities if you keep them in your headspace while you're doing these things to be able to shift that. I also look to the Wizard of Oz, where they walk across the poppy field and like have a hallucinogenic trip. Did it happen in 5 minutes, or did it take a day, or what happened?
I don't know. I'm still shivering with discomfort at the mention of a poppy field.
That's true as well. But I mean, the whole idea being that your players could walk into something that alters their state of an idea of time, even.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, hell, my last game,
Mm-hmm.
I opened it with presumably the date is this.
Right.
You don't know.
Right. You're not on Mundus.
Yeah.
There's no way to tell.
There's no sunrise. There's no sunset. You don't know if you just ate breakfast or dinner.
You're not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting things you do there.
Yep. So the other one that got me was the idea of changing up the mechanics, but leaving the feel. And that's a situation where, like, maybe your tank isn't there. Like, they didn't make it.
Oh, yeah.
So you still want it to feel dangerous, but your idea of having them step into this dungeon fight, and have a whole bunch of goblins jump them or whatever, and of course they were planning on tanking, like having the thing. Instead of having to pawn that person, there's nothing to say that the situation shifts so that isn't a necessary component.
Exactly, yeah.
Maybe there's a chasm between you and the goblins. They're still shooting, but it's now a ranged combat encounter.
Right. Maybe now it's kind of just like an endurance trial, or like a race or a chase or something like that, rather than a knockdown, drag-out slog.
But it still feels threatening. It still has that tension that you wanted for combat, and it still keeps it in combat.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
The flip to that is when you accommodate for the characters and alter the feel. Mm-hmm. And that's where, like, you have a party, and the person who's there is your talkie. The rest of the people are all fighty or stealthy people, right? And now, okay, so we got him into the party, and we stopped right there. What do we do now? Well, the rest of your party is really not going to have a lot of fun bumbling around because this person isn't there to do the thing that they do. Mm-hmm. So you flipped the feeling and have them get chauffeured away in some direction that now maybe they have another avenue to take, right? Mm-hmm. They're not allowed into the high rollers room.
But maybe they get to talk to the help.
Right.
Maybe they get to, maybe if they're stealthy, they slink off to a part of the manor that isn't,
Right. And they have their adventure and then reconnect back with that individual once they've completed their tasks.
Exactly. And the cool thing about that is, like, especially if it is like a talkie character that's missing, you can just use that to info dump. Mm-hmm. Just bring that character in at the end as essentially just an NPC little puppet and just go, oh, good, well, you guys were, doing whatever it is you were doing. I found out X, Y, and Z, and you can just info dump on them, and then, next game around, everybody's on the same page.
Yep. And you can still gauge your success based upon the success of the adventure. Mm-hmm. Like, there's nothing to say that if the party has a terrible time and get caught and all kinds of stuff, that, like, that person doesn't come stumbling back, barely breaking even or losing with a couple buttons off of their shirt, slightly drunk, holding a bottle going, my night didn't go well. Please tell me you guys got something.
Right.
And the answer is no. Like, we did learn that we suck at our jobs,
Yeah.
But that way you're not altering the feel just because that player isn't there. Then you're not giving them an instant success. You're not doing any of that. And you keep the game still leaning toward the successes and failures of the group. Mm-hmm.
So next one, kind of the same thing of taking that longer rest, but rather than trying to make an event with, like, people happen, where it sidelines a specific person, there's a lot of stuff that can happen along a journey as far as like weather or supplies or things like that. What if your group runs out of food? They need to go on a hunting expedition or something like that, and hijinks ensue or whatever. What if the bridge is out and they need to take an extended detour around it to try to find a place they can cross the raging river now that the storm's washed it out? Lots of great little things like that we don't. I think we take our environments for granted a lot, especially in like our high fantasy games, like Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot of stuff out there in the wilderness that really is just not traversable. But I mean, you could even do this in Cyberpunk too. Like, who's saying that like a gang war doesn't break out in an area you're used to being able to cross from A to B?
Yeah, or your local cyberdoc who you're expecting to keep you tip top at the end of this now tells you like he needs supplies. Like, oh, if you're going to go do something like this, you better give me some time to get restocked. All right, well, we don't have the time. What do you need?
Yep.
What do we go have to heist real fast to be able to take care of this?
Someone high profile got hit, and now the local fascistic police force has 3 city blocks on lockdown.
Yeah, how do you resolve that?
Right. Oh, but I'm supposed to be over there in 2 hours. Well, good luck.
Yep. Exactly. You also have, the whole idea that you could pull a dream state or a vision state. Now, I kind of did this in one of my games.
Yeah, you did.
And it turned out exceptionally successful with the way I did it, but it's not to say that you couldn't do something similar. And in that, like, you run the adventure whole cloth, and as it comes to a certain point in the adventure, the players come to find out this is all happening within a vision for one of the players. They get to see what happened, and everything gets reset. And you look at the rest of the players and say, none of that happened for you. Your character
never happened.
You've
just fabrication.
Yeah, you've just woken up, as if it was several hours ago in real time, and you are starting over from the ground up. But this player here knows everything that just happened, as if it was a divinational kind of vision. And it's those types of things that can throw your players off of like, okay, well, what gave us that vision? Likewise, you could have dream sequences that are totally unrelated to the adventure, but are related to something that's happening in plot. I know in my game, I could have easily done this where your character was working with our diviner to give nightmares to an NPC. There is nothing to say that couldn't happen the other way around.
That's true.
While you guys are having that rest, this is the nightmare that happens.
Now, if you're doing this for a group of people, it would need to be some sort of shared hallucination, but magic does weird crap.
Not
sure
necessarily.
You can.
My thought was different scenes per character.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, the other players are involved in those because, of course, they think of them. They're in that person's mind.
They're characters in other people's dreams.
Minds,
yeah.
But it's just not their dream.
Right.
And when they all wake up, they all have these visions and maybe talk about them and maybe don't.
Yeah, all right. All right.
And it's if some of our listeners remember Farscape, where they swapped bodies and the actors had to play the other roles. I loved that. That was one of my favorite things to watch because I feel that they embodied the other person's character. But I also think that would be an interesting parody moment of where you say, okay, we're doing Rhaegar's dream.
Pass your character sheets to the left.
But for everyone else.
Yeah.
That player gets to play their character, but everyone else gets to play a parody version.
Oh, God, that'd be so funny. Oh, I am putting that in my notes somewhere.
I mean, it's a neat concept, but it's something you could easily do because again, it's not exactly what would happen.
Yeah,
and they would be a little bumbly, but at the same time, that's the point of the dream.
Well, yeah, I mean, a dream version of a person is what another person thinks of you, not the real person.
Right.
So, I mean, we've seen that in a number of shows. I want to say Buffy comes to mind, but
yeah,
where someone's describing their dream and someone's just like, oh yeah, I'm so and so, I act like this. Like, that's not what I sound like. You know?
Or someone's also, the two other players are like, wow, that's spot on.
Yeah, and then he tore his shirt off and the wind blew back his hair. It's like, oh god, okay, you know.
But it's another a quick situation that could still be fun for the table.
Yeah.
But doesn't necessarily have an impact.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun that can be something different. But you brought up the idea of stories being episodic.
Yeah.
Keeping it to trying to keep your games so that they are episodic and people can just come and go.
Yeah, this is kind of one of those things. Like it's not something you do in reaction to a player calling off. It's something you do to mitigate a player calling off by styling your entire campaign around it. And that is just episodic play.
Yeah.
If every single one of your sessions is a self-contained story, then they're just not in that one. I mean, there are mainstream TV shows that like whole main characters just don't appear in episodes. You know, nothing saying that your game isn't the same. Yep.
I mean, the idea of a cliffhanger is pretty, ubiquitous across a lot of shows. But also the point is that by having a cliffhanger, you're required to finish it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like cliffhangers. My wife hates when I did cliffhangers in my games. Like, can we just wrap a damn thing in one scene? And the answer is, it's D&D. It's very hard. That's exceptionally hard. Are we fighting? No.
Well, no. I mean, it's not exceptionally hard. It's just exceptionally hard if you're trying to tell the rolling epic story like you were.
Yep.
And to an extent, I do mine the same way. But I just try to break it into little bite-sized pieces of like discrete events that make up the epic story.
Yep.
But it's not difficult. It's certainly not impossible.
Yeah.
But it takes that style of story to do it. Your style of story did not lend itself to not having a cliffhanger.
Yep. Very much so. And there's nothing to say that you can't just ignore the person.
Sure.
You can't ignore the situation even happened.
This is honestly the simplest solution. This person isn't there. Okay.
And that's it.
That's all the credence you pay it. You hand wave their absence. You don't explain anything. They're just not there until they are again. And nobody talks about it. There's no break in continuity if nobody ever acknowledges a break in continuity.
Yep. I love when TV shows do this and you end up getting the person coming back from something ridiculous that they choose. I can distinctly remember in the most recent cartoon reincarnation of DuckTales, Launchpad often is the character that does that, where like they land because he gets them there, and then he disappears. And you have no idea what he's doing for the entire adventure. And at the end, he comes back and he's like wearing like Atlantean armor with like a spear, like a sea trident, and they're just like, "You okay there?" Went and saw my old girlfriend. So how was your time? And you're like, what?
Okay, dude.
that answers nothing. But at the same time,
that's even more answer than we're even suggesting here.
Exactly.
Literally, just delete the character and then
put them back in.
And then put them back in afterwards. And like I said, nobody asks questions. There's no continuity break if nobody acknowledges it. So, maybe that's not the most quote-unquote, giant air quotes, realistic way of handling it, but hey, we're playing Dungeons & Dragons, guys.
Yeah.
Neither Dungeons nor Dragons are realistic. It's on the tin.
Now, this next one, I forgot about.
Oh, yeah.
Until you brought it up, and then I instantaneously made sense. And that was Critical Role did this with Pike.
Yeah.
And that is to have basically a spectral or ghost telepathic character. Basically, they're not really there, but they are there when you need them to be. Because that person was somewhat there, but not there. In reality, they had a movie to shoot.
Oh, it was a TV show.
Or
it was
a TV
an
show,
ongoing TV series called Blind Spot. Ashley Johnson, the player of Pike Trickfoot, was just not present for a good chunk of Campaign 1. And so, while she was off shooting, Matt... That's why if you saw Legend of Vox Machina, the cartoon on Amazon, why Pike decided to stay behind at the temple, and there was a lot of people who were like, well, I didn't find that story very compelling. Okay, maybe not, but that's what really happened, is that her character stayed behind at the temple and then would, like, astrally project in to check in on them on the times when either Ashley was on break from the TV show and was able to make it back for an episode or two in Los Angeles, or was able to Skype in all the way from New York in spite of the time difference, and was able to join for an episode or two that way. And then when she wasn't, Matt would basically pick up the scene where it left off, and Pike would be like, oh, I'm losing connection. Sorry, guys. I'll try to get back as soon as I can. Boof.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yep.
You know what? It's as good of an explanation as any.
Yep. I honestly think it's great. I think it's a really great way of handling it. I don't think it's a catch-all for all solutions, but I think it's a great way of handling it.
And, like, I think, like, I would have a hard time doing this personally, because I have a big block of, like, oh, I need verisimilitude. You know, I need explanations for things. I would need to find out, you know, how the physics in my campaign world work to make that happen. And the answer is, stop it.
Yeah. Hit points aren't real either.
Hit points aren't real either. Just, you know, if your player's there, let them play.
Yep.
It's fun that way.
It is.
The story, you're not publishing a damn novel. You're playing Dungeons & Dragons.
Yep.
Chill out. Bring your player in as a ghost or whatever, and then have them flicker out when they can't make it next session. It's fine. Everyone will get over it, and will be happy to have your player there.
Yep. Very much so.
And then I think lastly, and this is something I have seen you execute, is using technology to include them anyways.
Oh, yeah. We had a player who needed to stay under quarantine. Yep. And couldn't join us, but the rest of us were all at the table. And I whipped together a webcam, like, monitor, microphone situation so that they were effectively at the table and seeing the whole table.
You had, like, 2 different computers hooked up to Discord, one of which was through an earpiece that acted as a microphone for the storyteller, so that player could hear the storyteller, and the storyteller could hear them directly in their ear, but then also put a microphone out in the middle of the table and the webcam to show the table so that they could feel like they were in the room with us and hear everyone else at the table and understand the stuff.
Yeah. They had a monitor at the table that was them, and then they had the...
That's right, yes.
I had Google earbuds, the Pixel Buds, split. One just sitting on the table, which was great, and then one that was sitting in your ear. And then I had the webcam sitting up high so she could see the whole. They could see the whole table.
And all that was basically some, like, Bluetooth earphones, a webcam, a laptop, and a phone.
Yeah, because I was using the phone for the Pixel Buds.
And did you use did you use your Yeti or for the microphone?
No, it was just the earbuds.
It was just the earbuds. That's right. You put one earbud in the middle of the table and one earbud in the storyteller's ear.
Yep. And that was all that was necessary. And then charge them in the break sessions to make sure they stayed tip top. Okay. Because they did die a few times.
5 minutes to go pee, everybody quick, plug the earbuds back in.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, they charged fast. So a 20-minute break, they had enough charge to carry for another hour and a half. So Yep. Yeah. No, it worked out exceptionally well considering. I'm not saying that that's a solution for everyone. You have to have the technology and the spunk to be able to pull that kind of crap together.
Yeah.
And I think in both of the cases, it was your game that was being run, and
you did it once for your game, and
then I picked it back up for yours.
When that player was out for my game, then I was like, oh snap! Can you do the thing? And you're like, yes, I already know how to do the thing.
Yeah, I've already done it once. We
have the blueprint for it, so let's do it.
Yep, exactly. I don't think it would have worked as well if there had been 2 players out. Trying to do the same thing, because the crosstalk would have been challenging. Because I did have them on speaker, broadcast speaker, and there would have been challenge to try and figure out to get the audio to balance right between 2 people being on there. But I think you could make it work.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna have 2 people out, like at that point, I'm starting to consider let's just play online or let's just scrub the game. I mean, I've got 6 players, which is a lot, but that's still a third of my players.
Yeah. So, all right. That being said, I want to kind of walk through a couple examples.
Sure.
And see how we would handle these specific situations, because I applying it to something makes a lot more sense. We're talking in an ephemeral way. We've given some suggestions, but like of these, how would we handle these challenging situations presented to us?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to grab one of the ones off the list here for the what I would consider a difficult game to manage.
Okay.
So let's assume, I'm putting this one to you, that we're literally in the middle of the big bad evil guy fight. So fight started and we had to stop, and now it's the next session and a person's out.
Oh, God.
How do we handle that?
God, I'm getting anxiety just thinking about this.
I know, and it's not even a thing. Like
in the middle of the
big
BBEG
I mean, this
fight.
Literally is probably the worst situation you could run into.
It really is. It really is.
So
because you're already in medias res.
Mm-hmm. You got minis on the table. Stuff is going on. How do you handle it?
Oh, man. I mean, my initial thought is literally hand their character sheet to somebody else at the table. Unless this is that player's arch nemesis, then I would say that no one player at the table is important enough to alter the course of play.
I think that's the hip snap, definitely, like the quick draw of just we got to move on.
Well, let's just plug through it.
We have to plug through this.
Plug through it.
I think that is valid. I think that's heckin' valid. I think trying to accommodate the other player, if they can be accommodated, if it's that situation, is a good way to go, as best as you can, either through technology or something. But in lieu of that, if the person can't be available, and the idea of pushing it off to another session, whatever that may be, just isn't going to work for everyone else.
No. Do you want the creative answer?
Of course. I mean, we're literally workshopping this.
All right. So my creative answer to this is do a flashback. I say do a flashback with a capital F, like you would use one in
Leverage?
No, not Leverage. Blades in the Dark.
Okay.
So the pitched battle is happening versus you and the big bad evil guy. We stop. We flash back to find out how you guys lined up the reinforcements that are about to join you to tip the battle in your favor.
Yeah, reinforcements, or structural things.
The surprise twist, the surprise trap you spring on the big bad evil guy, something like that.
What changes the battle?
What changes the battle to give you guys the upper hand?
Or an exit.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever the situation is.
But yeah, let's go let's tell that story of how that happened, and then when we resume essentially next session, when everybody can be here, that's when that thing happens. We've told the story of how it got set up, and now you either make your daring escape using that planning, or your reinforcements come in, or whatever.
Right, and that's where I was leaning on this one as well. Is that if you do a flashback, you can say whether that was successful or not. It can be. Regardless, all those people are back in this moment and know in their mind frame what they think could help them moving forward. So maybe they did something very successfully, and that's why they've got the gusto at this moment to move forward, that they're hopeful that whatever their preparations were pulled off. And it allows you as a storyteller to still make that a little gray of how successful it was as an adventure. So that it doesn't completely pitch the story in too much of a direction. But I think if your players are successful, pitch it. Have it when the battle returns that things change and have a better outlook. I think it's a lot of fun. Yeah, Knox is Bill and Ted. I think that is this.
Yes, it's Bill and Ted going back in time and leaving themselves things to help them in the future.
Right.
It's essentially the same thing, only you're not actually time traveling in the middle of this. Yeah, it's
right.
You're just telling a flashback of like, hey guys, good thing we lined up those mercenaries that were gonna bust down the door right now when we say the word Jenga.
Yeah, exactly, and. It's those kind of moments that can really still carry the fun and the feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, your turn. Pick one.
Oh, right. Let's see here. I really want to hear your thoughts on what happens if this is direct player plot.
Okay, so give me an example.
Well, let's take the hypothetical that happened at my game.
Okay.
Lord Thalian Arroway.
Sure.
His personal goal is to hunt down cultists and root them out from all angles of society.
Yep.
He's got a lot of past trauma with this,
Sure.
and he's driven.
Sure.
And he's found out that there is a cult right under his nose here in the city.
Mm-hmm.
He comes to you guys and he says, I need you all to help me with this.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to go root these cultists out. I would love it to have the party at my back when I do this.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, there's going to be a big party, a big soiree tonight. Now, I know I'm the talky character, so I'm going to get us into this soiree. I know the rest of you will probably be a little uncomfortable there because it's not really your realm of influence, but it is mine, and I want you at my back. And the party starts, and he gets a call from work and has to go. And he's gone for hours.
Yep. Okay.
Game's already happening.
So in that, you don't know if or when he will return as a player to the table.
Know if or when he will return. We're already technically in scene, as in, like, the trajectory of the story is heading inexorably towards that. And the one character that cares about it, the one character that is the catalyst of it, cannot be there.
My point at that would be to split the party and change the feel. So now we've got the players who did not feel they would be doing anything but assisting that person in however way they can, now being pulled away from them. So, he gets drawn into a library with the muckety-mucks to have cigars, but it's not for anyone else's ears. It's only for lords and ladies, right? In the upper echelon. So now they've been cut off from that section of the party. You give them the opportunity, if they want to stay with the party, they can. But if they also want to go to the, guards room or start sneaking, now they have those hooks open to them because not all the eyes are on them. He's actually pulling you away from them. And now you can gauge the success based upon how well they do. And then later include, like you said, plot exposition, but also maybe you do a couple quick rolls with him after the fact, whenever you can fit it in, to say, okay, let's see how your scene went. And just make it straight rolls. The party did this many things. You don't let him know how well they did until his roll's completed. And then now you can change the feeling and mechanics as you need to for the other players to be able to have their fun and keep the story and adventure moving, and then everybody comes back at the end in some way. Yeah. So,
actually, really, Knox in the live chat here actually has a really good suggestion. He says, "Can you create a small combat thing for the fighters at the party by finding looters in the castle and stopping them away from the party?"
Sure,
absolutely,
100%.
You can absolutely throw in a distraction that has nothing to do with the party.
There's nothing I remember doing it in my 7th Sea game, where basically the Inquisition shows up and at a party, and it's like, oh crap, they're going to recognize us. We got to go.
Yep.
And now it becomes almost like a chase through the party, but nobody wants to break party etiquette.
Right. It's like the world's most slowest and politest chase scene.
Exactly.
Where everybody's trying to do the extended goodbye as they shuffle inconspicuously towards the door.
It's a masquerade, so they're changing outfits with other, to match other people and things like that. Going to the coat closet and putting on other people's things. Yep. Sneaking into other carriages.
Yep.
Setting up the falls where they can, but it becomes a different feel.
Yeah.
That matches their characters and allows them to enjoy it.
Yep.
Exactly. All right. I'm going to say here's one for you.
Okay.
A little different.
Sure.
We often stack the deck of our tables where someone is good at the rules or someone is a major role player.
Okay.
To help draw certain aspects of the game to help with it. You have the idea that this next thing is going to be very RP heavy, and you were hoping to have this creative flow at the table with somebody else. It's not their plot, but you wrote this portion of the adventure basically light to be more role play.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. I see where you're going with this.
And that person does not show up and can't be available.
Much in the same vein of how you flesh out an NPC and you toss it at the person who adopts NPCs habitually.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's a hook that you've got set up, but you don't have anything prepared.
So it's a heavy roleplay event. It's not necessarily geared towards that character, but the player of that character is a heavy role player and will love the scene.
Correct. It was because it's something that they love. You literally did the, this week is fighting, this weekend is talking, this weekend, this game is RP, and that person is now not here, and you're totally unprepared.
Well, I don't know that I'm unprepared for that.
Okay.
I mean, quite honestly, and this is maybe a cop-out answer to this, but I have 5 other perfectly good players at my table.
That is true.
You're correct. I mean, this one player might be my premier role player, and this might have been just an absolute cherry on the top for them.
Like a hard hook for them to swallow.
Sure. But again, if it's not geared specifically towards them, what are my other 5 players? Chop liver? No, let them role play.
Yeah.
They're going to role play it differently. They're going to, have an experience that other player didn't get to. But I don't see why I would need to alter my plans for that one if it is not something that specific character is going to be there for.
And I think this kind of just goes to show that, like, designing things for individual characters is more like writing a novel, which you should not be doing.
Yeah. I mean, there's plot you throw at characters. Like the example I just gave you with Lord Arroway at the party. Like the only reason you guys are going there is because of that character.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean you guys don't have anything there. But by and large, unless it is something directly consequential to, the actions of someone, it really should be pretty generic enough that anyone can enjoy it.
So since you had a fast answer for that one, let me throw this one at you.
All right.
In the same regard, you've designed a sneaky encounter because your sneaky person doesn't get a chance to be sneaky, and they don't show up.
Yeah, well, that's crappy.
It is.
Well,
do you change up the feel?
I guess, yeah, change the feel is probably where I'm going with this one, because I was about to ask you, define the sneaky encounter for me a little bit, because what happens if you can't be sneaky? Is it turn into a combat encounter? Does it turn into a chase? Does it turn into a political thing as you try to talk your way out of trouble? It's a sneaky encounter to allow the stealth-based character to do stealth things, assumes that stealth will be how it gets resolved. If it can't be resolved by stealth, what does it then turn into?
Right.
And is it necessary? I think the immersive sim genre of games like this, Baldur's Gate does a great job of this, where it just presents a situation, and on one hand, you guys are trying to do magic shenanigans from the next room to play the game like it's a puzzle game. I, on the other hand, am playing the barbarian monk, and I have Kool-Aid Manned myself in through a wall that was weak, and have picked up one of the magic cats, beat another cat to death with it, and threw its corpse at a third cat.
All of that is true.
All before you guys have entered the room, you know?
Yep.
And so I guess the question then is what other opportunities did the encounter present for resolution that aren't stealth? Can it be brute forced? Can it be politicked? Can it be bribed?
Right.
Can it be investigated?
Yeah.
Does it even need to be resolved?
Right.
Can it just be ignored? All of those things are viable, and I think, changing the feel, I think, is what we're looking for, is gear it towards the players that are there. Yeah,
exactly. And by all means, take a minute for yourself to figure that out. Don't feel that you have to immediately jump into something.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I often have seen too many storytellers who are just like, well, I had to just roll with this. And the answer is take a minute. Like, just take a few minutes, set yourself off to the side, reset your brain, and remember that the game can go on. The story can continue. And these are just ideas. Keep them in your back pocket. You never know when you might want to use one of these.
Mm-hmm.
You may want to even plan these on the side for futures when things happen or when they don't. Like, you may still use these when everybody's at the table.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to say that you can't change gears at the last minute and be like, you know what? I'm not feeling this right now. I want to go this direction with it. And you just change it up.
Yeah. I've definitely done that before because, like, combat just gets to drag a lot of times. And sometimes there's just like, you know what? I did have a combat here, but we're doing a dramatic task now because I don't have 3 hours to do a combat to resolve this, and I don't think anybody wants to.
Yeah.
Y'all look tired, and the vibe at the table is dragging.
Yeah, I mean, Matt does a great job for our Mouse Guard game where he checks our vibe at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever may have been in his headspace is not necessarily what gets ran.
Yeah.
And we have to be prepared for that. I mean, being in Michigan, like, we could start a game at noon, and by 3 o'clock, the snow could be pouring down. And now we have to make a change. Like, do I end this early and have it as a hanger? Or do I just realize that this is a possibility and go, okay, let me try and figure out how I can make this encounter go in such a way that we can just end it. That we can hand wave and end it. And sometimes it's easier to do it that way.
Right on.
So...
You wanna hop on the questions?
Yeah, we'll see if we haven't hit one of these, because Nevim sent a few, but I think we've hit some of these already.
So let's see here. Nevim asks, my scenario was putting the spotlight on a missing player. What should I do?
So, if the scene was meant to put a spotlight on a particular player, and that's important to your plot, then I would say shift away from that moment, do a flashback, do a resources, do something that requires preparation for it.
Yeah.
And then you're perfectly fine. Sidestep that part. Maybe they have to prepare themselves for whatever this is, or they get, they have to go through some level of delay, and now the rest of the party has to manage that time of that delay.
But yeah, if it was just putting the spotlight on that missing player, from the standpoint of like it's a fight and that character is the fighter, then you can easily shift gears on it. You can still run an encounter, but just shift gears a little bit. You know, make the encounter less violent if you have less combat potential in the group at the time. Make the rolls a little easier. They'll still be challenging if the main person for that particular task is not there.
Yep. It's the final scenario of our campaign. How should I handle a missing player?
Oh god, if it's the final scenario of the campaign, you delay that.
Yep. Any number of the tactics that we've already given you.
You absolutely delay that. I would. This is one I almost might cancel. Depending on how like set in stone that ending is. Because the last scene of a campaign, to me, that's like the crescendo. That's the cherry on top. That's the grand finale. And you bet your bippy, I have done a lot of preparation for that. And so, like, 2 hours before game starts, you're asking me to now, like, wing half of it?
No.
No. We're just canceling.
Yeah.
We will finish this some other time. It's only one game session.
I would probably, to keep the energy up and to make people want to still have that, I probably would do like a rollback or a flashback or something like that that helps explain the time delay and things like that within it. I would do something like that.
Okay.
If it's, it's we're going into the big bad evil's chamber, there are ways to manage that. That you can still move your timeline and shift things a little bit so that person can be there and that the energy still stays up. Because the last thing you want is a cancel and now everybody's left on a low and you have to reschedule but if you give them something that keeps their appetite strong for wanting that ending.
Yeah, I get it. I don't think canceling is necessarily a bad thing. Like, it's fine. You can cancel. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't want anybody walking away from this episode feeling like you can't cancel at all costs. You must play. Just shift something and you have to play. No, you don't.
No.
You can cancel.
You can
it's
cancel.
Fine.
Yep. As players, let your DM cancel.
Yes.
It's not cancel culture.
So, sometimes your DM secretly is like, oh, thank God.
Sometimes they need to be able to do that.
Sometimes.
All right.
Last question. Have you previously badly managed a missing player situation? Now, with your wisdom, how would you have handled it? Oh, I'm gonna have to think about this one for a second.
I'm gonna say yes, I have.
Sure, I'm sure we have.
I can't recall specifically how bad it went, but I can remember times when I had to puppet an player, and I know I did it wrong. I handled the situation. The situation got too involved, and that person should have been there.
Yeah.
I didn't. Was it horrific? No. It kept the game rolling, but I definitely would say that it hurt the situation.
I'm pretty sure I ended up in the same situation, where I ended up like, oh, I'll just NPC puppet the character
because they said it was okay,
and even regardless of whether they said it was okay or not, like that was just the decision I made, and the players all started to lean on that character, so it almost became like a DMPC where I was like, they wanted me to resolve my own plot using this other character, and it was like, come on, guys, like don't make me like. No. I think there's like an unspoken agreement that like if the storyteller needs to puppet a character, you kind of ignore the character as much as you can and solve things on your own.
Yep.
And not make them like speak for the character, make major decisions for the character, make that character the key person of the plot, and make that person resolve all the things.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I handled that very well.
Well, we've learned.
Yeah, we've learned.
It's been a few years.
Yeah.
To say the least. Lord have mercy, we've been running games for a long time.
God, we have.
So, funny enough, I can prove it. We've been running games for longer than Matt Mercer. That's what we got over him.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just by a few years.
But he's right there alongside us, though.
No,
like,
number of years, he's definitely within our realm.
Yeah.
But we've been running games for a long damn time.
Yeah, we have.
Too many damn games. In any case, next week we have a System Spotlight.
System Spotlight. We are going back to my wheelhouse here. We are going back to Savage Worlds, and we are talking about Deadlands.
Now, is this original Deadlands?
Not the original Deadlands. Oh. So, Deadlands originally was its own game system, and then it got picked up by Pinnacle Entertainment.
Okay. Yep.
And when the license was switched over to that, they switched over to Savage Worlds.
How about
that? It's been played that way ever since. And it's great. Frankly, it's just great. So
it's an action setting with horror elements.
So it's called the Weird West.
Yes.
Instead of the Wild West. And so it is ostensibly an action horror game.
Okay.
So I think very, very much in kind of the same sort of like World of Darkness did some Wild West stuff in the past as well. So kind of the same thing where it's Wild West on the surface,
right?
But things are a little, the shadows are a little deeper, the nights are a little more dangerous. Sometimes the dead gunslinger that you shot in the middle of the street at high noon comes back for revenge when the sun sets. The hucksters and the shaman and the things like that are doing their weird magics. And, it's a really interesting setting, and you don't see Wild West very often.
No, and honestly, there are times when I just want to run a one-shot Wild West kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because I like the idea of one-shot stuff for changing genres and changing feel and stuff like that. Just to give people some flavor. Like, sometimes you want Doritos, and sometimes you want Ruffles and dip.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That is perfectly okay. And I think we should be able to do those things.
Absolutely.
So. All right.
Well, you can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram at @ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And join us up on our Discord. We'd love to hear from you there. Talk to the other great storytellers that are part of our community. Shoot us some questions. We'll answer them here on the air. You can find that link on our Twitter as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members who support us every single month, especially our name members, Knox in the Box, Subjet, Sam, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion Veteran, Hulavu, and Sean. We appreciate all your support. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find them at patreon.com/arcaneanthems or on Google Music and YouTube now. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find them at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on YouTube Music. And our outro music is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find them at freemusicarchive.org.
And a big shout out, as always, to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for loving and supporting us. All of our friends who've sat at our tables over these years to give you these great stories to share with you and you. Every single one of our listeners. We love you guys so much.
Love you very much.
Good night.
Good night.